Welcome to Seminar Sunday, District 21's weekly episodic webinar series. This evening, we are talking about promoting your club at a summer market. As you'll soon learn, it is much more than a summer market we're covering off today. It's an honor to have you on the line with us. I encourage you to participate. You're able to unmute yourself and share if you wish, or you can also take advantage of the chat feature throughout the session this evening. First of all, I want to let everyone know that this is a weekly episodic webinar series, as I suggested at the start there. I do have the schedule for the coming weeks up on the screen right through to June 30th and including June 30th. June 30th just happens to be a Sunday this year, so we've got lots of weeks left of great content ahead. If you have an idea for a topic that you want to see covered, let us know and we can see about adjusting things and making sure that your topic is incorporated. Or if you're interested in facilitating, let me know as well. And we're always happy to share the stage, so to speak, with anyone that has an interest. And we've seen a number of great presenters through this year already. So what are we covering today on this webinar? Well, we're going to cover four things. Number one is we're going to share ideas how we can effectively promote our club outside our club environment. Summer markets is kind of our primary area we're going to zoom in on, but there'll be a few other topics that we'll cover along the way. We're going to learn how we can best prepare for these events. And well at those events, of course, we need to know, how do we talk to people? How do we promote the organization? How do we make those prospective members move towards guests and then eventually members? And finally, how can we follow up to make sure that that conversion rate is as high as possible? So those are the four kind of buckets that we're going to cover this evening. Once again, encourage you to chime in as you have an idea or suggestion. We are always happy to hear different perspectives and adding in to the conversation. A lot of this is prepared by our leadership team, myself specifically, and we sometimes don't necessarily see everything. Maybe you've got something you've experienced that can add to this, so I encourage you to chime in if you do have anything to add. The summer market idea is not limited to the summer, of course. You can be doing this in the winter, the fall, the spring, any time of year. You can go outside your club and have events outside the club environment. It's probably easier heading towards spring and summer because there's likely more events that you can participate in, but that certainly doesn't exclude anything in the deep, dark winters. So the timing of this webinar is probably ideal for moving into that busy season, but just keep in mind that these ideas don't necessarily stop right as summer does. You can roll right through to the holiday season and then into the new year as well with these same ideas. Summer markets, and I've tried to incorporate everywhere I can pictures of actual District 21 events that are occurring. So this is an event, I believe it was the Fleetwood Market, probably a year and a half ago, I want to say. We've seen lots of events like this, and they are relatively easy to get into. You'll be surprised how easy they are to get into, because a lot of them are basically farmers market at kind of at heart, but because they often have a lot of space for different booths and not just limited to those that are selling fruit or vegetables, we can get in, especially considering we're a nonprofit. So that's a big deal for us, because we're nonprofit. Oftentimes we'll actually get a discounted rate as well for registering for a booth, which is pictured here. It's not always the case. I can't say with 100% that you're going to be able to get into all of them, but we've seen great success. And like I said, this picture is the Fleetwood Market, which is in Surrey, but I've seen it in other pockets of District 21 as well. We've seen it in places like Ladner, White Rock. I believe I've seen something in Kelowna, Victoria. So it's, whatever your local market is. And I recommend, of course, just doing a quick Google search for what kind of farmers markets you have nearby to your club's location, and possibly pairing up with other clubs as well to kind of make it a joint event, which is easier then because you've kind of got a higher staffing level, but it's also something that is more energetic and a good relationship builder between neighboring clubs. I've searched near my home and there is tons of farmers markets. And from the experiences I've had in running these, I seem to recall it was somewhere along the lines of $20 or something to register our club. And that's really not much, considering you can usually run your stand from, I don't know, maybe 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m., something along those lines, right through to quite often 2 or 3 p.m. So if you've got kind of a crew of people that are willing to split up the shifts in between those hours, you maybe put in an hour or two as a representative of the club, and then you pass it on to the next representative of the club, and the event just goes along smoothly. And quite often, if you're very strategic in how you do it, you'll be able to get multiple leads to new members through this. And I've got some ideas how you can do it that I'll share in just a moment. I do want to, first of all, put a footnote as well in that we actually, as a district, have a tent that can be utilized for events like this. So if you're running an event that's got multiple clubs involved, and you're trying to put something together in your local city, and you don't have access to a tent personally or within your club, we can easily make sure we've got arrangements for you to get that tent. Depending where you are, we may need more notice. I believe right now we've got a tent, if I remember correctly, one in Victoria and one in the Lower Mainland somewhere. So if you're in the interior, for example, we will probably need a little notice to make sure we get it up there to you. But that's something that certainly I would encourage you to ask us as soon as you're starting to think about it. And that way we can see what is possible and what's not possible at the same time. And you'll also notice, of course, there's some district banners here. And you'll see that in other pictures as well, because that district banner tends to make its way around to a lot of events. Now, going back to the idea of how you can really increase your chances of getting some prospects. Well, there's a couple of things, and this will be the same no matter what you do. But in summary, have something that you can offer as a prize or a draw. That way you can get contact information from people. And secondly is making sure, and we'll talk about this later, making sure that people that are at that booth are not just hiding out under the tent. We're Toastmasters, and even though the vast majority of us are probably introverts, we need to pretend to be extroverts just for a little while we're running that stand in order to really get out there and talk to people and promote the organization. In fact, I remember going to, I think it was just called the White Rock Farmers Market. And we were so fortunate because the crew there ran an amazing show. They had this stage area with a schedule. So they had people playing music and all kinds of different things. And then between sets, they actually had us scheduled in for table topics. So we were able to go up on the stage and either have a Toastmaster do a table topic or even invite the public in to give it a try. And then furthermore, people that were at that booth took the initiative to grab some flyers promoting the local clubs and hand it out to the different vendors. And I thought that was really good because that's something that a lot of people probably wouldn't even think about. And they were on the ball with that type of thing. So just some things to think about if you are looking at going into a summer market. Contact the local ones, find out how much would it be to run a nonprofit booth and let them know what organization we represent. And then from there, we can get into some of that planning, which we'll talk about again a little bit later as well. The other thing that you could do, of course, is you can have a booth at a mall. And these are two different pictures. You'll notice that familiar banner in both of them. One of them is the, I believe it's the Semiahmoo Mall in South Surrey, and the other one is Woodgrove Centre in Nanaimo. So these types of stands are particularly good, of course, in the wintertime when it is a little more challenging to have outdoor events, because at a mall, you can just set up a table much like this, simple table, have some information on it, and away you go. I've seen this work very effectively in a number of communities. These Woodgrove Centre, I believe, even was generous enough to offer, I forget how many weeks it was, but it was maybe a 1 month period where it was every weekend we had access to go in and set up the table and promote Toastmasters. So whether it's a one-off or a regular booking, quite often, because this is even better in some ways than the summer market, because it is a mall and they offer a lot of community support, they actually have offered these tables for free. Now, I don't know for sure if that's the case with the Division F on the right-hand side there, but I know for sure in Woodgrove Centre there was no charge, and I've seen similar things in other malls. So obviously you want to pick a mall with moderate to high traffic to make sure that it's worth the time for everybody to go and put up a stand. But if the mall is going to offer you the space for free, then it's just a matter of scheduling, once again, with your club, or ideally with neighboring clubs as well. And then you've kind of got some energy built there, some community out of it. I really think that's the best way to run it, rather than expecting, 5 members of your club to just slog it out through the day. You can split it up, and you've got different people showing up, and kind of always a friend there to support you along the way. So that's another option that you can utilize and really take advantage of when it comes to promoting your club. This is another thing that's relatively easy to do, of course, going back into summer. This was in Parksville, of course, where they went down to the beach. This was a couple of years ago, and they're famous, of course, for the sandcastles there. So they actually built I don't know what exactly the correct terminology is. It's not really a sandcastle, but it's the Toastmasters logo and everything in the sand there. So just kind of a fun event to come out and build community, but you can also use that as a little bit of a public relations effort. People may see you making it and ask, hey, what is this all about? Depending on how busy the beach is, it could easily get noticed. And at the very least, fun to do those types of things if you've got a sandy beach nearby. Could be a great summer meeting idea as well. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that in another seminar Sunday, but just kind of putting the bug in the ear is this could be used as a bit of a promotional event. Probably not as big and as strong as the mall or the market, but it certainly should be free as well if you're just going to a local beach. As long as you're not going into some sort of competition that may have fees, but I don't believe that was the case with these folks. I think they just decided for their club meeting, if I remember correctly, they were going to go and make this sand sculpture. Parade is another option. I will put a disclaimer at the end of this, but there's definitely parades that happen in different communities around the district. This picture is actually from District 96. I believe it was up northern BC. I can't remember which community off the top of my head. However, it's something that they had entered a number of times. The one thing you do need to be careful about with parades, really there's two things. Number one is we are, as Toastmasters, it's in the bylaws, we're not able to support another charity or nonprofit in their fundraising efforts, basically. So that prevents us from going into a lot of parades, but if there's just a parade that you can join that doesn't necessarily have an affiliation with a nonprofit or charity, it is a possibility. So just approach with some caution there. And of course, also, you're not really getting a chance to get information about people that you could use to do follow-up. You're more or less just getting the awareness out into the community. Not a bad thing. Just there's specific differences, of course, in how you would approach things in a parade versus a mall or a farmer's market for that matter. So if you're looking at going in a parade, perhaps check in with myself or Sean or someone on the senior leadership team that can perhaps work with you to make sure that whatever you're doing is complying with the bylaws of Toastmasters International. Because the last thing you want to do, of course, is somehow infringe on the bylaws of the organization. But I think parades could be a lot of fun, and that's always been something that I thought would be personally at least a lot of fun, to go in and walk down a parade route with people waving the Toastmasters flag and just see what kind of attention that would get us. Anniversaries and holiday events. Now, your first reaction to this may be, wait a second, this has nothing to do with promoting my club at a summer market. Well, no, it doesn't have anything to do with promoting your club at a summer market, but this is more these events that you can do that are going to promote your club. And how it does this is you can bring back past members, you can bring potential members, you can ask guests to bring members to bring their significant others or their friends or whoever to these types of events, because it's a special celebration, but they also get a taste then from your Toastmasters club. So on the left-hand side, for example, this was Salmon Arm Toastmasters 40th anniversary. The person there holding the microphone behind the lectern is a charter member of the club. So somehow they went, and I don't think the person is a member currently, but they found somebody that was a member 40 years ago. I know you wouldn't know by the picture that the person was even 40 years of age, but they spoke at the event. And of course, if they were going back and finding their charter members and other past members and bringing them in, well, how powerful is that in trying to get people back into rejoining or bringing their guests along that may be interested in joining? The other side of the screen there is the Master Motivators. They had a seasonal lunch, and that was, of course, a couple of years ago now at the Harbor Towers Hotel. And as you can see, those tables are pretty full of people. They didn't have that many members at that time. In fact, they still don't have that many members. I mean, that's a room full of people. And it was because all the Toastmasters in the community all came together for this festive event, and they got to meet some of the members of Master Motivators, and then the club used it kind of as a promotion to spread the awareness of what an advanced club is all about. So these types of things you can do, very, very different from the summer market, but they're still nevertheless achieving the same result, especially if they're done effectively. Other ways you can have fun in the summer, and this is just more or less a teaser for our next, it's not our next, but our upcoming Seminar Sunday on summer meetings and what we can do. You can have a barbecue and invite a lot of people. You can go and do the banner raid. You can have an open house. These types of things can be fun, engaging events if you want them to be. So certainly things to consider if you're just looking at general promotion of your club through the summer months, which can be a tough couple of months to recruit people, of course, because a lot of people are away, and sometimes your attendance is dipping then at your club meetings. And I find it a bit of a tough time Toastmaster-wise, and I know some clubs completely shut down for the summer. Please don't shut down for the summer. Keep things happening for your members, because that's the easiest way for them to disengage and not come back in the fall. Even if it's having barbecues once a month through the summer months, that's better than a full shutdown. Attendance may be weaker, but you can have a lot of fun while going through that. Is there any other ideas people have for events like the farmers market or anything that you may consider attending?
Michael, one of the things that Division E does regularly is that they have a meeting at they have a community table at the local library, and the Breakhouse Library in downtown Richmond allows them to do that, and they can schedule them almost as often as they like. And sometimes when they're doing a special campaign this time of year, they will have it 4 or
Would I
5 weeks in a
do
row.
after 8 o'clock, please? Yeah, okay, thanks.
So by doing it several weeks in a row, they get an opportunity to get a lot of guests coming in, and they bring in a bunch of guests at for the meeting shortly after that. And then they can, because they have a number of clubs that meet nearby there, they can actually get them to come to multiple different meetings. It's really I think that's a really good approach, is also using that local community area, especially when they're focusing on English as a second language in a lot of the clubs. And a lot of people go to the library to access the books to improve their English skills. So that's one of the positive things that they get.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that. I know that Richmond does do that on a regular basis. I wasn't able to locate a picture, unfortunately, when I was preparing. I've seen them before, though, and they've even had displays up at the library, I believe, that are just kind of permanent. Well, not permanent, but temporarily put up, and nobody's necessarily there, but at least there's information about the organization, and people can find their local club that way as well. That's definitely something I encourage, is everybody to kind of reach out to your local library and see if they're willing to offer some space, or they also offer reasonable rates for space. If you're ever looking for a meeting room, quite a lot of the libraries are reasonable when it comes to rental. I had an event at one of the libraries locally earlier this program year, and I believe it was $33 or something for up to 3 hours. So very, very reasonable, of course. And the room was big enough to, if we wanted to, we probably could have had 20 or 30 people there. So could have started a club there. And you may find the same in your community. I know a lot of the US districts, they have lots of clubs that meet in libraries as well. So it's a big thing that I don't see as much of here. We tend to use community centers and so forth for a lot of our meeting spaces, but something to investigate if you ever run into a time when you need a meeting space for your club. Is there any other ideas out there of things that have been done that are similar to these kind of wavelengths? Preparing for your event. So that is the one thing that I think we sometimes forget about. There'll be somebody in your club that will have this great idea. They'll say, hey, let's go down to our farmer's market that's happening this Saturday and set up a booth. The club's like, all right, let's go for it. And then everybody just shows up on the Saturday waiting to be assigned some sort of duties. That's not as exactly effective. Remember, we are using this not just to put up a stand and have the Toastmasters logo in a public place, but we're using it to increase our club's membership. That's our ultimate goal, is we want people to come into the club, see what we're all about, and eventually sign up on a membership application. And if we're really lucky, we'll have a number of people come from that event, and they'll all be ready to sign up the next meeting. So preparation is key. And I know this is unfortunate for those of us that are looking for perhaps a little bit less work at times, but it is so important. And that's why it has to be a team effort, a plan for the whole team, how you're going to approach the situation and walk out with new members. So what can you do when you're preparing for something like this? Well, there's a number of things, and I'll kind of walk through them. First of all, once again, making sure that you let your area or division director know, or core leadership team know that you're running this event. The more people you can make aware that you're running it, the more likely you're going to get buy-in from multiple clubs and be able to really make this a big deal. You don't want to put all these efforts in for something that is low energy, don't really want to be part of it, because then your club's not going to want to go back and do it again. But if they feel like there was a lot of value, they had fun, got some new members out of it, the people passing by the booth can see the energy, feel the energy, they want to be part of it, that's when you know you've hit that sweet spot and your club is likely going to see some visitors as a result of your hard work. So asking us for the tent or some banners or both, before the event is going to be really, first of all, key. And that has to be done very early. Once again, going back to, there may be some logistical things that we'll have to work out in order to make sure you have some sort of equipment. If, for example, you want the tent and you are in Cranbrook, then that is really going to take some creative finessing to make sure that, you know, we can provide you with that kind of support. The other thing you can do that is super easy, and I know a lot of people don't realize, I talk about it every time I get a chance, flyers, promotional items. There's so much available on the Toastmasters website. If you go to toastmasters.org, go to the shop, there's a whole section dedicated to marketing, which is really what this is. It's a marketing event that you're creating. There's flyers like the one on this pictured on the screen here. They're free to download. You can order from Toastmasters as well, and they'll print them and they're all nice looking and everything. But if you're in a hurry, let's say something comes up relatively last minute, or you want to save the money on the order and shipping, and of course everything else that is factored in when ordering directly from Toastmasters, Toastmasters.org has things like this to download for free. So you can have some sort of flyer ready to hand out. You can have, there's brochures, those types of things. Obviously, those are something you probably want to order in because they're done properly as brochures. There's all kinds of cool little things. There's buttons, there's pencils, anything you want to get. And most of it is super cheap. Like, I believe those Toastmasters gavel pencils, which people love, I think they're 95 cents US. Like, that is not much if you're using that to promote your club, and assuming your club has some funds for marketing. You could spend, you know, $20, $30 more if you want, and get a fair amount of stuff from Toastmasters. So just something to think about well in advance of the event if possible, because ordering in those types of supplies is going to really benefit you as well. The other thing you'll want to do is think about how are you going to get people to provide their contact details to you, because what you want is a chance to follow up with them. Now, if it's a good conversation at the market that you have, like there's a picture where somebody stopped, they're chatting and having a great conversation, you may get their phone number, and that way you can follow up by phone. But if it's more or less somebody that just came into the booth just to provide their details related to a draw or something, then you probably want to just get an email address so you can kind of let them know more about Toastmasters. Although if you've got some people willing to make the calls are always better, because that's really a direct connection with people. You can have a conversation about whatever it is that you're suggesting. Basket, great idea. This is something that I've seen done in some farmers markets by Toastmasters groups, where they've put together some sort of basket. It doesn't have to be a significant value. It's just some sort of prize that people can see. You get them to enter the draw. That's where they give you their name and contact details. And then what happens is, of course, you do a draw, you give it to one of those lucky winners. But the other people, of course, are just contacted to say, hey, would you like to come visit our club? You know, here's some information about us. So there is ways to make that happen. And the other thing you could do is, if your club's planning on running some sort of speechcraft, for example, and members are willing to donate a couple of dollars each, maybe you could have that as the prize, you know, free entry into the speechcraft or something. Don't believe you can use club funds for that, so just be careful about the regulations there. But if people are willing to donate towards something, then that may be an option to make it Toastmasters related as well. And that way, you know, the people that are going and registering for this possible free thing are interested in improving their communication and leadership skills. So those are a couple of things that you'd want to consider doing before going in. Of course, once again, you'd want to talk to neighboring clubs and see who all is interested in helping and being involved in putting this event together. You can create a flyer for the community of clubs then. That's something I also noticed in the White Rock Farmers Market. They had all the local White Rock clubs listed, so nobody there. That's the one great thing about Toastmasters, and I hope you will do this as well if you run a farmers market. You walk into that farmers market not as a member of XYZ club, but you are a member of a Toastmasters club. And your objective is to find a suitable club for those people that walk by, even if that is not your club. If everybody goes in with that mentality that, you know what, I truly want to help these people find a club that's good for them, then your club is going to benefit as well theirs. But the moment we go in with that mentality of these people are either joining my club or not at all, then what's the point in being there? Because the reality is your club is not going to work for everybody. It's going to work for some people. And certainly if the conversation, you navigate through it and you find that, wait a second, this really would work for them, boom, you can let them know about your club. But if everybody goes in with that kind of team spirit, then it's really nice to see that, because it really shows as well that nobody has they've taken off their personal kind of interest in the situation and made it more of a community interest. And those I find are the markets that I find the most valuable. It's unfortunate when you've almost got two people behind a booth that are trying to do some almost. It feels like they're competing under the same banner. So that guests can see, or rather people at the market can see that and feel that maybe this isn't something that is what I want to be part of, because these guys are part of the same organization and they're kind of almost tug-of-warring over me. Oh, sorry, I did forget one thing here, and I want to make sure as well, whatever you do, make sure you look at the Toastmasters brand manual as well. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, of course, if you're going to make a flyer, you want to make sure it complies with branding. But also, branding is not about just the logo and those, our tagline, those things. Branding is actually how we look visually, but also how we act and how we make people feel. So that is something to keep in mind when we're at those events. Is our stand or is our booth, is it something that represents Toastmasters International? Not just in the look, but in the feel as well. So just something to keep in mind when you're putting your event together. Everything should kind of reinforce that, here's an organization. You can come in, it's an educational organization. It's offering communication and leadership development through the Pathways program, which provides support in public speaking, interpersonal communication, leadership, management, and of course, ultimately resulting in confidence. The elevator pitch. So this is when you're at the event. And one of the things that I've witnessed personally as well that was kind of sad to see is, we had this great event, lots of people set up, and everybody that was there was 2 or 3 clubs, I think, represented, stood underneath this tent that was set up and just chatted. And they didn't really get out there and interact with people. So maybe that was, they felt a little uncomfortable with the idea. I think in our Western kind of culture, we tend to be a little bit shy quite often with the sales, unless that's something that we work in. It's like, we can see that a lot with clubs, for example. Guest walks in, most clubs will not actually try to sell to you. In fact, Pat Johnson said that she would not have been a member of Toastmasters if she wasn't asked. And now look at what she's done. She's went down a path where she became the international president. She's done so much for her organization prior to that and since that time. It's incredible how many clubs are shy to ask. They think they're going to scare a guest away. And it's the same almost feeling I get with some clubs going to these markets, is they're a little bit shy to get out there and start talking to people. They want people to come to them, and that doesn't necessarily work. I've kind of adopted the same mentality myself, and that's something that I actually let my local advanced club know about this. I can't remember how the topic came up, but they said something about me not joining or something. And I just let them know. I said, well, nobody from the club has contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in joining an advanced club. So, you know, this is obviously, advanced club is a completely separate topic, but the point is, you asking a member to join your club is really important, as is you going out in a farmer's market, approaching people and having a conversation with them. I mean, you'll get a feel pretty quick whether or not they're interested. If they're not, okay, let them go. But if they're really interested, you know, bring them in, make sure they've got the flyer and information, sign up for that draw that you're going to have, etc. Really trying to, you know, start looking at them as a prospect to your club. And then the follow-up you do, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, is what's going to lead them down towards being a guest and then eventually a member of your club. So if you really go out there and, you know, I'm not suggesting in any way you're aggressive and, you know, anything along those lines, but that you're making an attempt, you're making yourself visible, you're trying to establish contact with people, once again, pretending to be an extrovert if you're an introvert, and just seeing what you can do for your club, going in there with the mentality that everybody that walks by is a potential member, and I have to talk to them in order to start that procedure to get them towards member. Sean Gold raised his hand. Sean, what would you like to say, sir?
I just wanted to try that and see if it worked. Actually, I had a few points on the previous slide,
Sure.
on the preparation, plus I had a comment on this one.
Sure.
On the preparation, 4 things I added that I thought might be of value. One of them is a sign-in sheet, making sure you have one for the guests, people who come there to sign in for further information, just to have that prepared. The other thing is having a schedule in advance of people who will man the booth or staff the booth. One of the things I found is that if you don't have that, you could have situations where you have a lot of people at the beginning and nobody at the end, and so on. So you really want to make sure you have a schedule as to when volunteers are going to be there to work the booth, and do that in advance. The other 2 things are more about what you'd have in the booth for the people coming by. One of them is, I found a laptop with a PowerPoint slideshow that about Toastmasters is an effective way that just runs continuously, so you can have that, especially if the people that are working the booth are busy talking to someone. And sometimes it just attracts people to the booth, seeing something flashy going on. If the people themselves are not flashy, I do think your comment about you have to be out there and be able to engage the audience or the guests are really important if you want them to join, or you want them to, if you want to start to engage them. It's very important for you to get over that introverted nature and get out there and do that. And finally, the postcards. One of the things that we did, Virginia Keys did this February for Toastmasters Month, is produced a bunch of postcards. You're talking about promoting all of the clubs in the area. One of the things is using those postcards. And if you don't have any postcards for your area, you can talk to Virginia and we can make arrangements to print up some postcards for an event like this if you're going to do it. So those were some of the suggestions on the preparation page. And I had one suggestion for the elevator pitch slide. And that is, this is a great opportunity to practice your why, or the my why, hashtag my why. And it's a campaign that Toastmasters International is doing currently this year. It's a really good way to prepare that elevator pitch. And it's to prepare literally a 30 to 60 second story about why you joined Toastmasters. Why did you, as an individual, do that? And if you have that prepared, if you have done that, thought about it, and either have done the video or at least thought about doing the video, then at least you'll have prepared in your head what your elevator pitch is, so that when you go into a booth and you engage someone, you can say, well, this is my why. And you can say it in 30 to 60 seconds. So it's a really powerful message when you're talking to people about to explain to them why you joined Toastmasters.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for offering that, Sean. That is So true. Sharing personal stories is something that I always suggest people do, because that's really what's going to connect you with whoever it is that you're speaking with. And having some sort of pre-prepared elevator pitch is important, because if you go in there and you just kind of stumble over what you want to say, it's not necessarily going to be a positive impression, or at least, you know, polished. You know what you want to do. You want to convince these people that Toastmasters is for them. So going in there with some preparation is going to benefit you, because, you know, you don't want to come off as scripted, obviously, but you do want to come off as somebody that, you know, they've got a message and they're able to convey it. So I've got on my next slide here an example of a very short elevator pitch that Toastmasters International provides. They talk about it in the brand manual. Pages, I believe it's 14 to 16 of the brand manual, talks about elevator pitches and gives examples. This is the shortest of them, so I just thought I'd throw it in there as an example what they're offering. But I agree with Sean as well that my why is absolutely a powerful message that you can send to people. Making sure to incorporate then a little bit about what Toastmasters is as well, instead of just why you joined it. Like, well, what does it offer? All right, it offers communication and leadership skill development. And keep that in mind as well. A lot of people like to go back to that, oh, it's public speaking. Communication and leadership is a broader blanket, and by sharing that, you may catch somebody that's looking for leadership skill development. Maybe they feel confident as a speaker. In that case, telling them that this is to learn public speaking, you've just lost a potential member who maybe is looking to move up that leadership path, and would have been a great contributor to your club, because they would have wanted to be, you know, trying out the executive roles and those types of things that will really help people with their leadership even more than just taking on meeting roles. Like I said, I'm not suggesting that you use this as a script or anything. It's just, there is those examples, and it gives you like a sample of like, okay, this is if you had this many minutes, this is if you had this many. But obviously you want to create your own, and balance the needs of having it polished and not, you know, pulling out a piece of paper with a script on it that you're going to read out to people. I would hate to ever lead somebody down that path. That would be awkward. Does anybody have any other thoughts so far on what we've covered? I've kind of been racing through certain sections here, but I'd love to hear ideas or thoughts along the way. We welcome involvement. Okay. Well, do feel free to unmute and chime in anytime if you do want to say anything. We always love hearing your perspective. So that is that's the elevator pitch we've just covered off. Once again, important, getting out of the booth or getting away from the table at the mall. Although I do want to caution you there, if you are moving away from the table at the mall or approaching people in general, some will have a rule that you're not allowed to actually go out and approach people. They need to come to you. I believe, for example, Tawasin Mills Mall, it has that rule that you can't, you know, go and chase people down and say, hey, come and look at my booth. You have to just kind of stand quietly, and if they approach you, great. Going back, though, to Sean's idea of having a PowerPoint or something up could be a way to engage people in a different way to convince them to come over. Because a lot of times I think people skip through some of those temporary setups at a mall because they think it's, you know, just another fundraiser or something. And what, I've donated, you know, this much already this year. I don't have capacity for any more. Or whatever the reason is that they avoid the stands. They often don't understand what's happening behind the stand. And if you have something playing or some easy to see representation of what you're all about, then the right people should come. But once again, you want to seem approachable and ready to speak, which is another reason why I think at the summer markets, it's good to jump out of the booth a little bit and talk to people, because it's even more intimidating to approach a booth of 2 or 3 people or more underneath this tent that are talking to each other, seeming like they're having a great time. It's really awkward then if you're just walking by and you're like, well, that kind of interests me, but it's kind of intimidating to go up to three people that seem more interested in talking to each other than talking to me. So just keep that in mind, is how could people be perceiving you as they walk by. So Lisa's mentioning here that she's thinking of get the areas together to go to the Vernon and Armstrong farmers markets with the club banners and TI brochures. The brochure Heather created from when the clubs meet and collaborate with other Toastmasters members and maybe have the time between musicians for table topics. Great idea. And that is exactly what is pushing me along and encouraging me to run webinars just like this. Is, we want to see clubs and areas feel empowered to go out and try different events. And, Vernon is an area that has quite a number of clubs in that general area. There's a club in Lumbee and Armstrong, and then I want to say there's maybe 3 or 4 clubs in Vernon, if I can remember correctly right now. So to get all those clubs together to kind of say, hey, you know what, if you're interested in joining a club in Vernon proper, well, here's the choices. We got a noon club, we got a Monday night club, etc. And then saying, but hey, if you live 20 minutes out of town, you're over in Lumbee or in Armstrong, there's a local club for you there too. That's really nice and a good team spirit. Vernon is a great place where we feel that team spirit very strong. So thank you, Lisa, for thinking of that. So here's, I want to say the most important part of it, but of course, everything that you do leading up to from the initial kind of reach out to find a location, you can do this right through this, is all very important, because if one step is missing, then it doesn't lead to success. But the follow-up is critical. And once again, I think maybe this is just kind of our nature. We say, all right, we went, did that event. It was a lot of fun. We got the word out. Energy's high and everything. And then you're kind of like, all right, now I'm going to go back to my club meeting and we're going to do our thing again. Great. Except remember, these people that walked by and gave you their contact details or had a good chat with you, they're now prospects of your club. They can become members. And if we look at them just as that, as prospects, these are people that have likely had a conversation with you because they have a desire to improve their communication and or leadership skills. Why not see if you can now get them through the doors of your club meeting? That's sometimes another intimidating point. Like, we all know what it felt like walking through the Toastmasters meeting room doors for the first time. It's a little scary at first, and sometimes taking that step to get into the meeting room is a big barrier. I mean, approaching somebody at a farmer's market is one thing, but now I got to go to at a certain time through these doors. There's going to be a room full of people I don't know. There's definitely intimidation there. So following up to provide them the reassurance and support to get them into the meeting room is critical. How you do that is, boy, you can do anything. I put it here, though, this quote from Zig Ziglar that I really like. Your attitude, not the aptitude, will determine your altitude. And it's so true. Going in there with a positive attitude, thinking about how can I make this even better? How can I help our club achieve success? All the steps leading up to this follow-up is great. But approaching this with the same open mindset and the attitude that you can convert these people is what's going to determine whether or not your club gets 0 new members from that, laborious 8-10 hour day your club members put in, to maybe getting 5 or 10 new members. Anything is possible. And that's why I wanted to include that quote, because I really think that if you go in, guns a-blazing with, a solid plan and everybody's trying to talk up different people at that market, you're going to create a lot of energy out of that. And then the next step is, of course, I like to use the term, I guess, off-ramping them into your club. So they're on that highway going through the the market, make them take that exit and go to your club meeting. So what are some things we can do? Well, number one, of course, back to that contact details. We can email or phone people. Phone is always going to be more effective, but I know that's another intimidation spot for all of us and kind of our culture nowadays, especially. It's like we like to live in an environment of email and text message, but if we can call and connect directly, then it's a great chance to have further conversation about, hey, you know, saw you at the farmer's market, we talked about this. This is what we have to offer. Would you like to be my guest? Nice personal invitation to the club meeting is going to be probably the strongest thing you can do. An email, definitely a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? A lighter version, I guess you could say, of approaching them. It's easier though, easier for you to put together, easier for them to receive, but also how many times do people not respond or read emails? Very common. But making sure that you, especially the people that you know had some degree of interest, that you follow up is absolutely key. And I think this is important even for guests that walk in the door. So let's take it a step further. All right, so now you've convinced them to come in, you've got their contact details. I would suggest after that meeting, that first meeting, they've come, you ask them if they're coming the next meeting. They say, you know, yes, I am, I'll be there. If they don't show up that next meeting, call them again and say, hey, you know, we missed you at the meeting, and be able to kind of keep that cycle moving. And if you've got a group of members that are committed to your club that can work together to kind of almost have a team going, that, you know, you have 5 different people, for example, from your club that are all helping with the same thing, that will make it easier. Because I know we tend to think, you know, our VP membership is responsible for recruiting members. That's not quite the case. It's everyone's responsible for recruiting members. And if we can all help the VP membership, that's going to make sure our club has a nice, healthy number of members to lead us to success. And success is not just being a distinguished club. It's also being, you know, a place where you don't have to double up on roles. You can take years off the executive without having to you know, kind of watch the club fall apart. There's a lot of things that you get out of having a healthy membership number. So I encourage you to keep that in the front of your mind at all times. Is, you know, how many members can we recruit out of this? How often should we do this, to really have a solid plan how you're going to make this work for you and your club. With that, I'd like to welcome any other questions before we move towards the closing here. We've got just a couple of minutes left, and if people have questions or ideas, things I didn't cover, I'd love to hear them as well.
I liked it. I thought this was great summary of the various events. I thought that there's a lot that we can pick up from this session. Thank you.
Well, no problem. That is my goal, is that we can kind of increase steam as the summer comes, because that's a time when we typically tend to decrease, and of course that kind of shows in our clubs, I think. And if we keep things going strong through the summer by doing things like this, then you have an even better community going within your club. So
thank you, Michael. Well done. Lots of good points to sell Toastmasters.
Thank you very much. Okay, everyone. Well, I really want to thank you for spending your Sunday evening with me again here today. If you ever want to reach out to me, my contact details are at the bottom of the screen there, mbownD21@gmail.com, mbownD21@gmail.com. We can arrange a call or email exchange of information. If you're going to the District 21 conference, we will also see you there. And anytime you've got questions about whether it be a market or anything else Toastmasters related, feel free to reach out. Always happy to be a resource. Take care, everybody.